you should be dreaming extremely big in the current market because the amount of appetite from the end consumers to solve their day-to-day problems is very, very high. I think having that big vision is one of the most critical pieces. Like you should not be solving point problems or just one piece of the spectrum.
Hello, and welcome back to Off to the Valley, the podcast where we explore the journeys of entrepreneurs, innovators, and changemakers who are building impactful businesses beyond borders. I'm your host, Pratik Panda, and today we are excited to be joined by Gorish Aggarwal, a tech entrepreneur on a mission to redefine sales automation with AI. Gorish is the co founder and CEO of Sybill, an AI powered sales assistant that empowers high performing sales teams to type less and sell more leveraging AI. With an AI background, computational science, and machine learning, Gorish's career has taken him from Stanford's research labs, where he worked on cutting edge AI projects, to leading this fast scaling startup that just raised $11 million in Series A funding. Gorish, it's great to have you with us. And I would love to dive deeper into your journey. Tell us a little bit about your time growing up, your background, what got you to where you are today.
So this is a very unique question. So I originally hail from India. I grew up in the northern part. For those of you who know about geography of India, I grew up in Chandigarh. That was where I did most of my schooling. Bachelor's, I went to IIT Delhi. Was a big tech nerd and a geek back then. Was participating a lot in robotics competitions and building like badminton playing robots and seizure detection machines and brain research. That was where I did most of my bachelor's, started working for a big company, Samsung Research, and doing more of healthcare AI. From there, moved on to Stanford to do my grad studies, again in AI and healthcare, building a lot of artificial retina products. So basically curing blindness by implanting electrodes onto the retina of a human eye and making the brain perceive like it's actually the real visual scene instead of the eye doing the job. So that was my schooling. And then post my grad studies, I actually started lecturing at Stanford in the engineering school to teach students about optimization theory and linear algebra. And that was where also I got the idea, the first in Sybill, which then eventually ended up in us starting a company with my other co-founders. And 4 years later, we are off to the races and building something really crazy, really big.
How did this happen? I know you touched a little bit about how the idea came about, but can you share a little bit more about how you experienced the pain on the sales side and decided that, okay, here's what I want to build?
The reason I moved to the US was to health tech and especially the intersection between brain research and AI and how they come together. And I always wanted to start a company in that domain specifically. Once I started doing grad studies, I realized with anything related to health tech, regulatory approvals and is so high, and the time to get to the market is like 10 years at the minimum in many cases. That to see the impact of the work, it's going to take a long, long time. So I started looking at more SaaS or more non-regulated industry companies. And that was where we started tinkering it. So I had my co-founder at that point who eventually came up with me on Sybill. But we started tinkering into physical retail, into fintech, into like ed tech sectors, moving out of healthcare basically. But sales was still very, very far away from what we wanted to. Now, once I started lecturing after my grad studies, my lecture shifted online. And what ended up happening was in an online lecture, like I had like 40 students and I could not see any of those on a Zoom call. So it was like a one-way communication. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we had an AI to capture facial expressions and body language on these Zoom calls of the student? And like for the presenter, it's like a signal on, hey, people are excited or they're confused, or maybe your joke didn't land that you tried so hard rehearsing. That's how we started out. And that was actually the first inspiration for Sybill in 2020, where we were like, we're going to build this and we are going to give it to presenters and audiences. And the first set of like wedge into the market was sales, because sellers, as soon as they heard this non-verbal cues and facial expressions, they were like, this is the coolest shit ever I've seen in my life. So I'm going to use this and I'm going to find a lot of value because I can read the minds of my buyers. Like, sounds great. Very amazing. Target ICP has the money to spend, is a very clear value prop. Let's go and build it for them.
So, for all the founders, and so many of them are listening to this right now, what is your advice on? Sometimes we end up being too rigid with our ideas also, that this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I want to build, but you are seeing
Yeah.
signals from the market that here's where there is potential, right? At what point do you start entertaining that, and how do you motivate your
Yeah.
co-founders to move to that direction?
Yeah. I think there's a big problem with sunken cost, and a lot of people that have spent a significant amount of time in working on a single project or an idea or a company for that matter get into this fallacy that because I've spent so much time, it actually is better to continue doing that versus starting something new. I made the same mistake myself multiple times because I pivoted from like many different times, both in my career as well as from a startup perspective. I think nowadays I follow one single question whenever I have this doubt, which is like, if I were to start again today, would I pick up the same idea or would I pick up a different idea and work on something else or work with a different set of people? And if the answer is I would still do the same thing, then I would continue on that journey and continue on that path. If it is a different thing, then I would like go in and figure out something else.
Yeah, that's a great point. And a lot of times we struggle to give up just because we've put in so much effort that we're not able to see that that's not worth it anymore. And we are really finding a new direction to realign is so important at that point. So you realigned, you figured out, there is some potential in making this sales side AI assistant. There are, like, in today's date, so many such tools in the market, right? How do you think about
Mhm.
what's a
Yep.
differentiated value that Sybill brings on? Or the other way to think about this is, how do I make sure, like as a founder, as Gorish, how do I make Sybill sticky for whoever wants to try this out?
Yeah. So market for any kind of AI tools is super, super crowded today. People are building in our space, people are building note takers left, right, and centers, essentially building wrappers on top of an existing LLM or a bunch of different AI tools. We ran into this problem, or we do run into this problem even today and very frequently. In fact, like, and I went to this conference last year and I was like speaking to someone and I told them we are building an assistant for sellers. And they're like, you're the 15th person in this conference that has told me that exact same pitch. I'm like, okay, but what did the other 14 do? And then we got into a differentiation of this is why we are different, why those other guys are different. But the truth of the matter is buyers are starting to tune out AI assistants, AI, just anything related to AI from their ears. There's a lot of demand, but like every company is an AI company now. Every company is trying to build agents and assistants and all of like at least they claim to be building that. So that's something which is big challenge in the market. For us, um, what we figured out, and this has been true from a philosophy perspective, because we were very heavy on product and technology, is especially in crowded markets like GTM tech, and that's true even with AI before this new wave of AI, it's the product that can really make a difference. If you can provide real value to the end customer, so there the product can shine, where the end customer becomes a champion of the product. And there are two ways where the value gets delivered. One is the output is very, very high and like and very valuable. So in the AI domain, that output is typically related to how well you can perform certain tasks or certain actions on behalf of the reps. And second is how easy is it for someone to be able to adopt that tool, which is how easily you can perform those tasks in action without friction. So whenever we are building the product, we always have this philosophy. Okay, one, we are going to give a really good output so that the user trust on the system remains high. And then because we are targeting a very specific non-technical persona, which is the sellers, we cannot make the product complex. It has to be simple. It has to be where the adoption is much, much easier. And those two help a lot with this.
That's great. One of the things that I had also seen, you mentioned that it's not just a note taker. Like there are so many note takers already out there and continue to add on. So they're just really giving you an AI transcript of the call. And sure, there are some action items and those summaries are helpful. But one of the things that I love about Sybill also is that it's also taking care of a lot of the work that goes into the CRM. And I'm yet to meet one salesperson in more than a decade of doing this who would say, I love to enter data into CRM. So, as a salesperson, you want to be on more calls, you want to be client facing and spend as little time on the CRM as possible. I'm sure you're hearing a lot of love on that side as well. What are some of your customers telling you about Sybil? Is there anything that you've heard of how they use Sybil that you'd not thought of?
We take a lot of pride in that. So the way I like to think of it, it's not a passive note taker. It's actually an active assistant, which does the job for you. And someone shared, this is like a customer shared, I don't want the AI to take sales calls for me or to close deals for me. I want the AI to take care of my laundry list of to-do items so that I can close deals and I can be on calls with customers. And I think that's a very beautiful way to describe it. And I think that's like the thesis of what we try to emulate within our product. Like if I can take care of all of the passive selling action items on a rep's to-do list, and that can be like CRM update is one, following up with customer, doing the back and forth to schedule a meeting, creating decks, creating one pagers or collaterals. Those are not things which reps are typically like, those are not directly getting them to close more deals and get more dollars. It's the face time with the customer that's going to do. So we are working towards taking care of all of these action items independently from the rep's plate, where all they need to do is like, if they're going on a call, they have a brief preparation strategy of, okay, these are the things we are going to talk about today. Here is what we have spoken about in the past. These are the individuals or the companies that are on the call today. They go through the call, and then after that, all of the next steps, the action items, 15 different things to do, the bill can take care of. And you can obviously have the rep review and check what the AI is generating before it builds the trust. But don't let the rep spend time on that level of laundry list items. Their times is much more precious.
Absolutely. So talking about growth, right? You've made $1 million in 9 months or so. You've grown almost 15x in 18 months. If you have to think about this, what would you say are some things that really worked in your favor?
Word of mouth and product-led growth was the biggest mover. Even today, we are getting 65% of our leads just via word of mouth or referrals from other people. And that's big because right now our scale is much bigger. We have more customers, more mid-market and enterprise customers than what we had previously. And so at that scale, like getting a huge word of mouth really helps a lot with the branding and the company. And I think this is how we are built as well, both as our GTM engine and our product are very accustomed towards a high referral positioning. And that is a huge thing. I also believe in the power of social media and LinkedIn. And so we have been very active. The entire team has been very active on LinkedIn. Our sellers typically live on LinkedIn a lot. And so ensuring that Sybill is top of the mind, both us and other people are posting about us on LinkedIn, and we are engaging with those comments, and sellers are going to bring that news is really another thing which keeps on keeps Sybill top of mind of people.
You've also launched this initiative called Humans of Sales to bring out the more human side stories to the whole sales process. How did that come about?
Yeah, I think over the last 4 years since we started Sybill, I've probably spoken personally to 500 plus sales rep at this point. And one of the interesting things which I didn't realize, because I come from very engineering heavy domain, like I did my engineers in my bachelor's and then graduate studies. That's a very standard path. And coming out of India, the sales, one of the very, very cool things is like how unique these people's journeys are. Many of them are born to be salespeople. Like they start out, their entire family is a family of sellers. And then they transition from different kind of sales, from door-to-door selling to like, I met this amazing person. Started out in sales because she wanted body lotions for herself. So, and the company had a scheme I forgot the name of the company, where if you sell X number, you would get one free for yourself. And then moving on to gym membership selling, to then finally SaaS selling. And then there's another persona of salespeople that never wanted to be in sales, but somehow find themselves land in the sales domain. And that's also equally unique and interesting. So our goal with humans of sales is like, can we capture these stories, these raw, unfiltered stories of sellers, both like their life journeys, but also like their wins and losses, specific in specific deals with specific customers, things that really make like sales as a sales people human, right? The trust, the connection. And so after listening to so many stories, I got super excited, and that's how we started initially the platform. And other angle there is also, it just is, sales is the backbone for any company's growth. But it's also kind of the profession which, like foot soldiers, they always get lost in the bigger war. And so I want to be able to find ways to highlight those stories.
That's amazing. I know a few people. I'm going to send them your way. Uh, so I'm going to take a few steps back because as I'm getting to know you better, one thing that is sort of this picture in my mind is, you've had this very mathematical, analytical sort of background in engineering, uh, and you've been building stuff around AI. How, amidst all of this, how did you end up taking a lecturing role at Stanford?
Uh, so as I shared, I used to be a big nerd in college, especially in bachelor's. And I was like, I want to do a startup eventually. That part was clear. But if you're trying to do a startup, you need to be able to learn how to share your story with other people, similar to this podcast right now, and just be vocal about your thoughts and be able to guide and uh, mentor other folks. But at this huge gap there, that cannot happen as with me as an introvert, as a nerd. So like what I will do is I will try to push myself into sort of areas where I can be out of that comfort zone and have to become extroverted enough. Lecturing was one of those areas. So I started out lecturing, or I even applied for that lecturing job instead of a standard software internship, because I was like, if I have to give those 16 or 20 lectures in that quarter, I will have to speak 2 hours every day. And in order to do that, I would need to prepare for it. I would need to get more confidence, and that will eventually help build this. So I applied for it, I got it, and then I got really scared after this because like the first time it was in person, and I had an auditorium of 200 students. My lectures used to start at 11:30 in the morning. I would wake up at 3 a.m. to prepare for those lectures. I would spend 6 hours, 7 hours just reading the material, what I'm going to teach. And then I would get to the auditorium, and the half an hour before, like I would get at 11 so that I have some buffer time. For half an hour, there would be so many butterflies in my stomach the entire semester. It was just crazy. And that happened on day one. It also happened on the last lecture, which was the 16th lecture. Did not change it on. But it builds sort of this whole mechanism of like, okay, I need to do this again and again and again. And I'm more comfortable with crowds now than I was before. And then I repeated the same thing the next year. And next year, it was a much different scenario because I was way more comfortable. I was in my element. And that really helped build that muscle for me being able to go out.
It sounds like an amazing journey, and you've definitely come a long way, because based on this conversation, I wouldn't take you for an introvert at all. But I can imagine the amount of effort you would have put through to get to where you are today. It's amazing. Tell me this, right? Like, I've been a founder 3 times. I keep saying this repeatedly over the show. The highs are exceptionally high, the lows are terribly low. You've been doing this for a while now. Any stories you want to share about the low times? Part of this podcast is also to bring out the human aspects of the founder journey, that a lot of stuff looks rosy and exciting on the outside, but you go through a lot of rigor behind the scenes, right? Have you experienced any of those with Sybill or anything else?
I think our worst time in Sybill came in 2022. So in 2020, when we started out, we raised a small round of funding, a pre-seed round. And we basically decided we would be cash conservative and take very little salaries for the round. And we would find PMF and start raising again. Unfortunately, the PMF that we were looking for never came. And by the time we realized that there is no PMF, we were already at a point where we were running out of money. And whatever signals we had were not enough for us to get to the next round. So we had this period of 8 months from May to December of 22, where we were running out of money every single month. We did not have PMF and we were not able to attract investors. Like I was fundraising for 8 months. I probably met 150 investors in the valley during that single round. And it just wasn't materializing. And that was like the lowest point here. Like at one point we came as close to like 3 months of runway or 2 months of runway. And investors had been pushing us to look for acquisition options. Our heart was not really into getting acquired, but we still went out and spoke with companies. And because the team was strong, we were able to get 3 acquire options. But it was not something which we were excited about. Like that question, if I were to do it again, would I do a different thing or would I start again? That time was when that question sort of got formalized in my mind. And it was also, I, I'm a person that does a lot of things at the same time or used to do that in the past. But that was one point where I realized if I want to build a career in some area, it would be startups. I want to be a founder. I want to innovate and discover and build new things and create impact in the society. And I think that was the point where this whole idea sort of formalized and got drilled into me. Like, even if I go out and find another job, eventually I will come back and start my own again. I think that clarity came because we were in such a downward spot. Eventually, we did get lucky, and one of our seed investor today basically decided to take a bet on us solely because of the team and nothing else. Like we did not have a story, we did not have good metrics, just because of the team, and we got a small amount, even smaller than our pre-seed round, as our seed check. And then alongside parallelly, again, because of a lot of things coming together, generative AI got launched and we went on that bandwagon. So that turned out really positive for us. So eventually it didn't really work out, but that moment when you are at the lowest, you realize a lot about yours, which is very hard to figure out when things are looking more good. And not many people know about this, but this was like probably one of the darkest times of my life as well, because you see out there and nothing is working.
A lot of people get into the founder journey or startups because it is exciting. When I started my first company back in 2011, 2012, it was not a glorious thing to do in India, at least. It was definitely the case here in the US, but increasingly it became a cool thing to do, right? And you over time realize how hard it is and that, these low moments that, like you said, so many of those that I experienced, maybe only 1 or 2 people who were the closest to me ever got to see or even know about those times. And otherwise, in general, most people would just assume, oh, great, such a amazing startup journey and so on. So I really appreciate you sharing your experience. Tell me a little bit about as you got this small check, it helped you, get back on track. You mentioned that one of the other, I would call it maybe an environmental factor, is Gen AI came on board. There was a hype about it. It became easier to build products based on Gen AI. For people who are looking to raise money now, it is a slightly more difficult market to raise money in than it was maybe 3, 4 years ago. What are some pieces of advice that you would say based on your experience?
So this is a very interesting time for this generation to be building something. There is so much in favor that is going on that can really help you build the most kick-ass product or the company out there, right? And GenAI is obviously a big part of it. I think still what I feel, and this I've seen many times happen to us as well, because the market is too crowded, people get too bogged down by the nuances. And this is not true for only sales, but every single market which has an AI component to it is starting to look more and more crowded over time, and way more crowded than 3 years back. Like, people get bogged down by, okay, how am I going to be able to compete with so many big companies, given I don't have money, I don't have capital, resources, all of that. I think right now there is a tremendous amount of appetite for AI products that actually work and that actually solve a critical use case. And people miss out on that point just looking at the high level branding of these things. Cursor is a great example. Like, we had GitHub Copilot backed by one of the most capitalized company in the world, but Cursor came in, like, disrupted the entire coding assistant market, went from 0 to 100 million, in fact, from 1 to 100 million in less than 12 months. It's like crazy how fast that growth is. And that is what is possible in today's world. So, like, you should be dreaming extremely big in the current market, because the amount of appetite from the end consumers to solve their day-to-day problems is very, very high. And this is also something that investors love to see. So I think having that big vision is one of the most critical pieces. Like, you should not be solving point problems or just one piece of the spectrum. It should be, how can I disrupt this entire workflow? And then the second part comes, how do I execute on that vision in order to do it better and faster than anyone else out there? So, like, the vision and the execution are two sides of the spectrum in this market. We are, like, what GenAI has captured is only a fraction of how much worth there is to generate. And while the industry is moving fast, it's still pretty much day zero in terms of where we are at to where we can really go and be, right? So a lot of the people that come to advice is like, what do I do? In many cases, if you don't have an area where you are super deep into, or you don't have an interest, pick an area and learn the ins and outs of that area, as opposed to dwelling too much over what area to pick up. Especially if you're super young in our career. When I started out, I had one single work experience, not like a bit, and sales tech was new to me. But I spoke with 500 at least sellers, direct B2B sellers, and probably another 500 other GTI folks, just to get a sense of what B2B sales is. And I think people need to do more of that.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Super helpful to so many people listening. I'll ask you one last question, and it's kind of a derivative of what you already said. GenAI is still nuanced, it's still early. There is so much more potential that we've not seen so far. You've done a lot of work on the AI side, you've done your education, research, as well as active building work. Where are you seeing AI shape up going forward? What are things that you are excited about in this space?
One of the things for GenAI that I get really like amped up about is like agentic workflows. I think nowadays it's becoming much more of a like common term, as common as LLM used to be, let's say, a year ago. But agentic workflows, and this applies to our product and our company as well, provide you the ability to actually take actions in the environment that the agent is operating in. For sales use case, the way we think about our product is like, I'm part of the deal, or Sybill is part of the deal. It's able to understand what's going on in that deal. So it's able to perceive the environment and then able to take actions on it to help the sales rep do the job. I think that to me is a very powerful framework, right? One that actually can create a lot of impact and value for the end customer. Multiple examples of this, which have done extremely well. Cursor, we talked about for software engineering. There are many support agents that are coming up daily, which are like defined on the ability to take those actions. And it's great because once you take an action, that typically is an output or outcome for someone. So you can actually some pay for that action taken, as opposed to simply an input uh, license or users that is provided, right? So there's a huge alignment of interest of the end customer and of the company if they're taking those actions to deliver a specific outcome. So that's, to me, is like the future of this whole space. And there is a lot of innovation going on, and it's very exciting how we see the industry shaping up here.
Coincidentally, I was part of an interview earlier this morning where there was this question asked to me around how do you go about AI software for your use cases? And because it's such a crowded market, you can keep going around shopping for tools. And you said one thing that also, struck to me, because I kind of said the same thing this morning, is you buy for outcome. So look for AI that gives you the outcome that you want rather than looking for software that has AI or whatever. Think, here's what I hate doing or don't want to do or eats up my productive time. And here's an outcome I would like to achieve. Which AI tool or product can give me that outcome rather than trying to, find the best software out there that can do pretty much everything and so on. Yeah, great, Gorish. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I'm very excited about Sybill's journey and your journey. Wish you all the best. And thanks again for spending time.
Thanks, Pratik. It was a fantastic conversation.
And that wraps up today's episode. Before we sign off, I would like to thank you for your support and thanks for tuning in. If you loved today's episode, then don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Be kind, be happy, challenge the norm. I'll see you folks again for the next one.